Well, Jeremy, very good afternoon to you.
Hello, me old son. Well, that was a great week to take a week's holiday, wasn't it? Let me get this absolutely clear. So in the space of 7 days, right?
Yeah.
Rishi Sunak manages allegedly to sort Brexit.
Yep.
Boris Johnson's career's stuffed forever.
Yep.
Our very own Isabel Oakeshott tells Matt Hancock that he's a duplicitous, lying piece of whatever, and it's important that the world knows.
Yes.
That was enough to deal with. But then I come back this morning and guess what? The bloody migrants are still at it, pouring across the ocean.
Yes.
And, of course, the royal family is still arguing the toss. So nothing much has changed,
No,
to be fair.
I mean, the more it changes, the more it looks the same, I suppose you might say. I mean, my favourite quote of the day so far, we're going to hear it shortly from Oliver Whitfield-Majicic, is at the Charles Bronson parole hearing, where the judge apparently apologised to him for keeping him waiting, to which he said, I've been in prison for 40-odd years, a couple of hours don't make much difference.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? Oh,
yes.
That's a really...
Incredible.
There are many people with an opinion. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I don't think dangerous people should be allowed out of prison, period. That's it.
Is he still dangerous?
Yeah, of course he is. I mean, you don't become undangerous just because you tell people that you're not dangerous anymore. And if he doesn't like it, tough. You know,
I watched that documentary. I watched that documentary on Channel 4. The only thing I'd slightly say is that the bloke that used to be a paparazzi is apparently his son that he's just discovered. That is, I don't know. It's all a bit weird. I will say one thing: migrants and royals tonight, definitely on the show, and the appalling Wayne Couzens. Just given 19 extra months. Can we just get this right? As my wife just said to me, for indecent exposure before he murdered Sarah Everard. What does that say about
I mean, I think they've gone through the motions. I mean, the trouble is, I mean, he's got a whole life sentence, so he's not coming out anyway. And again, I wouldn't ever want to be having a conversation about him wanting to come out when he's 70. No. Not interested. You know, you stay where you are and you rot in jail, mate. You know, but I know what you mean. I mean, a lot of people saying things to me that if men like him cannot control themselves and cannot stop exposing themselves, you know, you just have to put them away, because the trouble is there'll be more people like him than there are people like him who murder women. But there's an awful lot of men who do that.
It worries me that was before that heinous crime and the murder and rape of that innocent girl. So migration tonight, I will say this, you know, I've been Sunak's biggest fan. Has he sorted out Northern Ireland? Has he ruined Boris's career forever? Could he perhaps deal with the migrant crisis? I don't know. Do you know what? Every time we have the conversation about it, Mikey, on the show, whatever we say, people say, oh, the Home Office isn't fit for purpose and the processing system isn't fit for purpose. And I say to myself, well, bloody well, get a system that works.
Well,
right?
Exactly. I mean, I think this is a better idea than the Rwanda one. It's a better idea than the let's process them all a bit quicker one, because I've always said you have to make it impossible for people to just come here and stay, and then they'll stop coming. As soon as you make it a bit more difficult, they'll stop coming.
Did that special last week, which we repeated while we were away, with Tony Abbott, who created that situation in Australia. He went, no, you're going back to Java. I don't want to put an Australian accent on them. Going back to Java. And he said, and we made it so unattractive to them, it stopped. And he said, when we were doing that in Australia and whenever it was, the early 2000s, you know, the Labour opposition was up in arms. They took government, the Labour opposition, about 6 months ago in Australia, and they've kept it going. We have to be strong. I'm sure Starmer will now say he's going to be strong in immigration, because he's suddenly turned into being strong on everything, hasn't he?
Well, he doesn't quite know what to say about immigration, does he, old Starmer? I mean, that's the trouble. I mean,
maybe our Sue Gray, who's supposed to be an innocent civil servant, who turns out to be not only his new chief of staff, I missed that as well last week, his new chief of staff's going to be the person inquiry into Boris.
The question of the week is going to be, when did you start talking to Sue Gray, and what did you say to her? Because apparently he doesn't want to prejudice an inquiry, so he's not willing to say. Wes Streeting, who appears with Julie Hartley-Brewer quite a bit, said that he didn't know when they started talking. It's quite an important question, it seems to me, and I don't see how you can prejudice an inquiry by telling the truth.
So I completely agree, do we give Rishi a bit more credit and think maybe he's done Brexit, maybe he's going to get this immigration thing sorted? Then, of course, you've got Boris Johnson. Has he flattened his career forever? Is that it? Or is Boris going to bounce back on the back of the Sue Gray obviously knew too much? God knows, mate. And also the royal stuff. I mean, I'm sitting here, I live in Windsor, I'm looking out. Frogmore Cottage, apparently, the day after Spare was published, Charles went, get out.
You know what my favourite bit of that story? My favourite bit of that story is that Princess Eugenie goes into the cottage, right, with some movers, puts a load of stuff into packing cases and sends them all off to Montecito. And goes, there you are. That's all your stuff. It's like evicting some, you know, unwanted tenant. I love it.
I love you can use Frogmore if you come to the coronation. I love the article. I don't even know who wrote it today. It's somewhere. And it basically said the coronation for those couple of is such a difficult one because their egos will insist and their Netflix deals will insist and their whatever BS will insist that they go there. But then the other side of it is they're going to get such, I think, an appalling reaction if they do whatever anybody tells me. Oh, yeah. It's a real difficult one. How do they stay relevant if they don't turn up?
I think the only way for them to get around all of this is for him to come on his own. She uses Archie's birthday as the excuse that she stays behind, and then it doesn't become quite as much of a circus. But then, if they did both come, it'll be like the Queen's funeral and the Queen's Jubilee, where they weren't invited to everything. You know, it's a bit like when you get, oh, look, I've got my VIP passes to Glastonbury.
I will repeat, whether people like it or not, I'm lucky enough to live on the long walk. I was there with Oliver, giving him a push in the pram, and I saw those four come out, that, you know, the great force and back. Yeah. There was a Netflix crew 100 yards behind them.
Yeah.
Two heinous people.
Can I just point out that there were certain royal sort of watchers who disagreed with me about the fact that this was just all for the cameras. They were like, oh no, this is a new rapprochement, this is going to be good, this is going to be much better. Well, look what's turned out to be the case. He now does an entire interview with some Herbert, who is a pro-Hamas, you know, shrink in California, who apparently doesn't mention his own brother in an hour and a half of talking.
I don't know. I watched that. I thought it was. We're on the lines of a bit of desperation now, to be honest, Harry. What do we get? He looks. I love. There was an article. It was Sarah Bynes. He just looks beige now, doesn't he? Everything's beige about his life. And it's all a bit. I don't know. Listen, tonight we're back live after a week away. God, what a week to be away! I mean,
know.
Is there still a studio? What's going on?
But what a week to be back as well, because there's plenty going on today.
Migration, the royals, the heinous, I've used that word 3 times, Wayne Cousins, but the biggest bit of tonight is, I mean, I don't want this to sound the wrong thing, but I've missed you. It's been 9 days. You're back.
Shocking.
We're seeing each other.
Yes, it'll be very nice. I shall be there.
I've noticed something, Michael, in my absence.
Go on.
They've parted your hair a different way.
Have they? Are you sure?
They've done it from... Yes, it's a different side.
Well, you may be right about that. I've lost count of which side it goes on now. But
you're looking rather well, I must say.
But thank you very much indeed. I had a decent sleep, had a reasonably relaxing weekend, but I've got plenty to tell you, which will obviously be in a session before we go in here.
Yes, well, that won't be on the telly or the radio. We'll do that later. I want to tell you one thing about going on holiday. Apart from missing all the news, managed to get conjunctivitis. I couldn't see sod all for 3 days. So that was great, yeah.
That's bad, yeah. Did you get the right drops? Because quite often I've been to get drops in the chemist, and I once went and they said, oh, no, we can't give you these drops. I said, why is that? She said, well, because you might become... immune to their success. And I said, well, if I'm not using them, I'm also immune to their success. Would you mind awfully just giving them? They wouldn't give them to me because they said, you'll get too used to them and then they won't work anymore. I said, well, I don't need them to work.
I went to the doctors like that and he said, you've got conjunctivitis, and then I put them in and 3 days later I was like, that was fine. But yeah, no, great to be back though. Really looking forward to the show tonight. Yourself, we've got loads of guests lined up. We're going to look into that immigration thing. Henry Bolton, Ivan Sampson. We'll get Alex Phillips, who is absolutely fantastic. We'll do the Royals with Emily Andrews. We'll have Kinsey live from LA. Yeah. We're going to have Simon Harding, my sort of, I mean, he's turned into a friend of the show. He's the man who prosecuted. He was in charge of the Wayne Cousins thing. So fascinating. And the showdown with you and Miss Thorpe tonight.
Oh, Miss Thorpe. Yes.
Ava's on holiday, apparently.
Is she?
Is that right?
I didn't know socialists had holidays. Who knows? Wow. Maybe she's at re-education.
Probably paid for by us, me old son.
No, it's probably a re-education camp in Beijing or something, is she?
And I must just say that the laughing boy, he's having a bit of a hard morning. He just said to me, he was outpouring his heart to me, and I actually, for a moment, felt quite sorry for him.
He was a bit wrong-footed early doors, shall we say. Leave it at that.
Yeah, just leave it at that. Don't worry, laughing boy. We'll wrong-foot the opposition. Leave it to me and Mike. We're back. I'll see you at 7, mate.
See you later.
Thanks for tuning in, by the way.
Can't wait.